Thank you, everyone, for coming today. My name is Franco Patano. I am a strategic data and AI advisor at Databricks. I'm here today to talk to you about Rise of the Medallion Mesh. This is a concept, framework. I look at it, it's the way that I've been discussing with customers and people who've been thinking about modernizing their architecture, learned a lot from a lot of their mistakes, and from what worked and what hasn't. This is kind of a framework to help you all understand how to approach the modernization of migrations and how you should be thinking about meshing all of these frameworks together. So that's kind of the topic of the talk today. People are still trickling in, so let's give them a couple seconds. Looks like we're good. All right, so before we dive in, I like to just set the stage, if you will. I've been, in discussions with folks that are modernizing in the cloud. I could sum up the major concerns that they've had in these 5 points. First off, data security. My data's not secure with you. We're not working together, right? I have to have proper governance. We know how important governance is. If you were there at the keynote talk this morning, Ali talked about how governance is important, but also quality. If you want to do AI, you have to have real quality data pipelines. If your data's not quality, it's garbage in, garbage out. Actually, we used to joke about this in analytics and BI, garbage in, garbage out. AI lets you do garbage in, garbage out 10 times faster. And with confidence, it will say the wrong thing. So it's really hard, it's really important. And then as people have been modernizing, they see that there's pitfalls with performance, scalability, and total cost of ownership. How does that all play together? What trade-offs do you have to make? There's this skills and expertise gap. You're selling me another product. Do I have to train all my staff on how to use it? Do we have to learn a new tool set? And then I have data all over the place. I have data in a bunch of systems. Like Ali said this morning, you have one of each, but sometimes you have n number of each throughout your organization. I've got data everywhere. How can you help me integrate and migrate? And then finally, how can I provide the right tools to my folks, to my data workers, whether they're data scientists, data engineers, data analysts, visualization people? How do I give them the right tools on a single version of the truth so that they can get their job done for all use cases? I also had AI help me build the research for this. I have a perplexity string where we were analyzing it and found that a lot of customers, a lot of people really struggle with these things. This is very common. So, who am I? Well, like many of you, I was a practitioner before joining Databricks. I worked in the Chicagoland area. I've worked in primarily heavily regulated industries. And now at Databricks, I actually I help regulated industries customers. But essentially, I've done banking, for-profit education, commercial real estate. I've done weird and strange things with Excel, VBA, and Access because the business told me, JFD, just effing do it. And I had to get it done with the tools that they gave me. I always dreamed, I used to watch the growth curves of Microsoft, Apple, Google. When I was growing up, in my career, Google was taking off. They went public in 21. I graduated high school in 21, and I thought it was amazing. Man, who would have thought that Microsoft would have outpaced Google in AI, the future we live in, right? I love time travel, fiction and nonfiction. The longer I'm alive, the more it's turning into, could be nonfiction, but that's always fun to experiment with. In my free time, I like making pizza from scratch. I listen to EDM. If anyone's going to data night out tonight, DJ Kitty works at Databricks. Katie McKinney is going to be there. It's going to be awesome. Definitely check it out if you're into that type of things. And then I've always had a problem with the data warehouse. Every time my business partners needed data, I couldn't get what I needed out of the stock reports, and I'd always go to the data warehouse team, give me the data. Well, it's not in the warehouse. Well, where is it? It's in staging. Why isn't it in the warehouse? No one had requirements. Well, I need it. It's gonna be $100,000 in 6 months for us to take the data and put it into the warehouse. But it's right there. Because you just put it in? No, there's this whole thing called data modeling and ETL, and it turned out to be a big problem. So I've been trying to get rid of that pesky data warehouse or figuring out how I can get what we need out of it in order that we can deliver results. Everyone wants to do Gen AI. It's the point of the conference, data and AI, right? Everyone is super interested in, every executive is telling their people, we gotta get into AI, we gotta do AI. Everybody wants to do this. But building these things requires modern tools. We know because we acquired Mosaic last year and then we give them Databricks and then we had all the tools for them to create these things. They gave a great talk, you should check it out. But you need all these things in order to build all that stuff together. But these are the tools once you have your data together. Once your data is quality, then you can start doing this. But if your data is not quality, you can't do that. But most organizations are struggling to connect all these dots in the cloud. Maybe you're using cloud native services. Maybe you're using other products or other clouds or other data clouds, and you're trying to stitch it together. But data and AI is siloed. They don't communicate with each other. The privacy and controls are wild, wild west. And you still have to require very technical staff in order to do anything. I lead the Databricks SQL product at Databricks. It's our warehouse. It is an excellent mechanism to get what you need to get your job done. It's kind of gonna be the focus, but this is the product. I'm gonna be telling you how to approach the product, not necessarily about the product itself. I have amazing product managers that are all giving talks about all the amazing stuff that they built this year and then the vision of what they wanna build. But just assume everything's in Delta, we're using Unity Catalog, and we're using serverless SQL. And it's trusted. This Databricks SQL is trusted by over 4,600 of Databricks customers across industries. This is not a point solution. It's not a small thing. It's the fastest growing product out there. Somebody on Twitter actually ran the data for me. If you want to know, let me know. I'll send it to you. But it's the hottest thing in data right now because it's actually a great warehouse, and I'm going to tell you why. But first, let's talk about data security, governance, and quality. Databricks Unity Catalog really ties the lakehouse together. You should not be approaching any of these things without Unity Catalog. Anybody that's telling you otherwise, or trying to get you to do otherwise, is wrong. I'm willing to die on that hill. Because it offers so much amazing things. Simplified data discovery, people can find what they're looking for, they can see how it's related, you can govern it, it catalogs all these federated data sources. We're gonna get into why that's important in a little bit. And then it tracks all the lineage. It knows end to end, where did that data come from, down to the column level. That's amazing, especially when you're trying to do root cause analysis on a data problem. To have it transparent for you is amazing. It's not just lineage, but your entity relationship diagram. How is my data related to each other? How did it get here? It helps what I call data understanding. People can understand who's using this. What are they joining it to? What is it being used for? And when you understand that, and then you can grant them permissions and you get all your auditing supported, it's just a no-brainer. You should absolutely use it. And it's secure. On our serverless SQL warehouse, it's now in Azure, you can do this. It's included in the cost. Private link is included if you want to do it that way. We also let you do other ways to do this. You could do stable VNet IPs to go over your firewall. But it's private. You can set this up to be secure, well-governed, and private. And then when you use Unity Catalog, you get an amazing amount of things out of the box. You can do proactive alerts. We're going to be diving into this a little bit later. You get real-time data lineage right down to the column level, so you know exactly where data ended up. And this is going to be really important. I'm going to show you why in a little bit. We build automatic dashboards that let you see all this transparency. And we'll actually use AI to forecast your costs so that you're not going to have a cost shock when you're using the platform. And you have this excellent observability of what's happening. And you have this operational intelligence that you know what's going on in your platform. We have a simple data modeling tool that we call Lakehouse Monitoring. The data scientists were using this for model drift. And I was like, this is key to data management. Just in general, you have to understand the statistical distribution of the data as it's moving through your pipelines, because that's how you find data anomalies. So this is super important. This came from another part of the platform where they're using ML, using it for model drift, but it's super important to your data pipelines. And you can build this data monitoring right into your pipeline, so you know exactly what's going on, what your data looks like. And then you could put alerts on it so you can be proactive. And so your users are not gonna end up finding bad data in a dashboard and then being like, how did this get here? And then there's a big kerfuffle and we gotta track it down. You can be proactive about it. Let's talk about performance, scalability, and total cost of ownership. Databricks loves doing benchmarks. My favorite friends, actually, I just ran into them before I came here, has a whole team that just run benchmarks on Databricks. Some customers, they say, but these benchmarks are nonsense. That's not my data. You're right. Benchmarks, like machine learning models, all of them are wrong. Some of them are useful. Let's see some of the useful ones. Across the board, this is how you evaluate vendors against each other. It's the level playing field. It's really hard to take your data to every vendor and compare them. So that's what benchmarks are used for. How can I have the level playing field? And here, Databricks SQL is ahead of the pack. From a cost and performance perspective, it's top of the line. It's best in class, total cost performance. You get great performance at a low cost. And when things start scaling up, a lot of folks have gotten into real big problems when they've put all their data in a data cloud or a specific vendor, and then they start scaling up. After about 100 users, other systems start to struggle. Databricks is based upon Apache Spark, which scales linearly. Some people say infinitely. We say to a point. Nothing is truly infinite when you really know the gravity of numbers. But you could see here that after 100 users, other systems start performing poorly. Databricks SQL, it's a pretty linear curve. So you can expect the same level of performance with 10 users to 100 users to 1,000 users. So when your data goes viral, you're not going to be paying all of that money to your provider. How are we doing this? There's amazing talks from our product and engineering folks of all of the projects that we have put in over the past 2 years that have delivered amazing performance. This is not a benchmark. These are real customer queries. From month to month to month, we track our performance of the existing queries and how they've improved over time. Customers have just naturally gotten 73% faster queries. They didn't have to do anything. I actually had a great early customer of Databricks SQL tell me how they saved internally. They got 6x faster queries at 44% cheaper cost by using our new serverless SQL warehouse. They were all excited to tell me all about it on Monday, and I can't wait to wrap it up and tell everybody else about it, because it's an amazing story. But having good query performance is not the end-all be-all. Then there's also predictive optimization. We just announced the GA of this today. How does the system organize the data, collect all the statistics that the system needs in order to execute really good queries, really efficient queries? I used to write blogs, give talks on all the knobs you have to tune in order to do this. And about 2-3 years ago, the PM was like, hey, we need to take everything you guys do and just put it into AI. And this is what happened. Anker, the company that does the batteries and USB cables, they turned this on. They got 50% cheaper costs. Their cloud storage costs went down by half. And they noticed their user queries got performed twice as fast. So you get faster and cheaper with predictive optimization, and there's no knobs. And hey, don't just trust us. We export all of that data to system tables, so you can validate what we're doing, what we're spending your money on to get that performance. Okay, this sounds great. How much am I gonna have to pay in training? And how much downtime are my people gonna have to learn your products? Usually it's the second thing that your sales executive will sell you is training and support, right? Well, we've been working on how can we give great natural experiences with natural language? How can we just give the user what they need? They just ask for what they want, and we do it. And there's 3 experiences that we've been focusing on to deliver this. First one, it's this amazing, some people call them co-pilots. We call it the assistant. But the assistant can do the brute force of your basically coding, right? Instead of having to reason about what's that function again, what parameters go in there, how do I map it, how do these things join? Instead of having to spend all that time, your users just ask for what they want, and it gives it to them. I have a great example of this in a couple slides. But then we didn't just stop there. Text-to-SQL is great. Taking natural language and making SQL queries is okay, but what about the dashboard tool? How much time and money do we spend learning Power BI and Tableau, all the knobs that exist in those BI tools? Can't I just ask it for what I want? Can't the AI just build a visual for me? And it can. We call this text-to-viz, and it's baked into our new dashboards. And so your visualization analysts don't have to spend time tuning all the knobs and taking the training to figure out how do I build this dashboard. They just ask. They just ask the dashboard to build it for them. Announced today is data rooms. I think our marketing changed their mind. They wanted to call it AI, BI spaces. I don't know what it is, but what it is what it's called. But it's basically a chat room for your data. And this is for your business users. This is text to answer. No, we're not going to give your business users Databricks complicated interface. We're going to give them a nice little chat room, and we're going to put all the logic in natural language and instructions. And that basically ensures that the AI or the assistant is giving out correct answers, contextually correct to the business user. And Ali talked about this morning. There are certified answers. But I think the greatest thing of this, we collect all their questions, and we surface it up in a system table. So now your analysts can see, how are my users asking follow-up questions? How can I use that to influence how I'm making the dashboard in the first place? And no longer is all of that logic, transformations, ending up dead in Excel on these people's laptops. So let's get serious here. When they're frustrated with what they're getting in the system, they're going to export to Excel and just slice it and dice it their own way, right? Well, now if they can ask their follow-up questions here and we can capture that back, we could be more smart about how we build these things. And that's what I think the future of self-service is. Now, these things sound great. I don't have to spend a lot in your tech. I don't have to spend a lot in training and performance. But I got all this data all over the place, and I'm not going to stare down the barrel of a 3-year migration that's going to cost millions of dollars, right? Who wants to do that? I don't think you should. With Databricks, we give you a phased approach, flexible migrations at your pace. We announced the Lakehouse Federation last year. It's GA this year. We lower the barrier entry to get started by federating to those data sources. Unity will secure and govern all those sources, and it tracks all the consumption. So we know what data they want out of those systems. And then, when we need to lower the pressure on those systems, we materialize in the cloud. And this basically lowers that stress on those systems so we don't own them with Spark. Because how many times have we owned an OLTP database with Spark? I know I have. I've helped customers do it on accident. But Materialize helps relieve the stress off of on-prem or other cloud systems so that we can, these AI-intensive applications, these data-hungry applications, they have their own kind of like materialization. And then finally, we acquired Archeon last year. I believe the announcement's coming tomorrow. We're announcing that we have a Databricks native ingestion capabilities. So off of those OLTP databases, we will incremental CDC the data off them and efficiently bring them into the lakehouse. So we have a phased approach to burn down this migration. And the amazing thing is it helps you understand where your users are consuming what data and where it's coming from. We had a customer that took this approach. They found that 50% of their pipelines were not utilized by the data, the tables that they produced were not utilized by anyone. They called them zombie pipelines. They basically said, we're not migrating those. They cut their migration time in half before they even got started, right? And then they had the data to prioritize. Now we know what are the most popular data sources, right? And now we can prioritize, and we have the receipts. We go back to the business and we say, listen, these are our most popular data sources. We need to prioritize this way, and this is how we approach the migration. We have data, business-led approach to how we should be burning this down. But there is a tremendous amount of technical debt. And the biggest one I see many, many, many customers tripping over, falling, and they into exploding cloud costs is stored procedures. Listen, I came from the data warehousing world. There was a reason why we did this. When Informatica came around charging you for every data connector and their costs went out of control, I had executives go to the data warehousing guys and be like, hey, can you help me cut out Informatica out of this picture? We could save $1 million. Yeah, give me another $500,000 in hardware on the warehouse. I'll put together some store procedures. We'll do the ETL in the warehouse. When storage and compute was tethered, this made sense. You brought the logic to the warehouse where the data was. In the cloud, storage and compute is separate. It's the whole point of going to the cloud. These things are cost spikes just waiting to happen. And then I'm not even going to talk about all the inefficient things that the business forced engineers to do inside these procedures because they just had to get it done, right? So we have to clean up that mess. How do we clean up that mess? I have this blog where I talk about refactoring these black box monolithic procedures into modularized workflows. Let's parse out all of that logic and build it step by step. And so now you have true transparency into what's going on. When things fail, you can recover simply. You don't have to line by line go through a 1,500 line store procedure, true story. Literally have customers with 1,500 line store procedures. Now you can just have a workflow and you can recover super simple. And I'll show you an example of this in a little bit. But let's talk a little bit about workflows before we get there. What is workflows? It's amazing. You have these excellent triggers. We have a file arrival trigger. So if people are dropping files for you on Object Store, the workflow will just wake up when that happens and process your data. We also have a Delta table update trigger. So if another team updates a Delta table and you want to spawn a pipeline, you just hook that trigger into there and it'll start up. We give you all the control flow that people used procedures for, like if, else, loops, modularization. And the big reason why people come to Databricks is parallelization. I want to parallelize all that runs. Workflows helps you do that in a really sane way. And you can execute all these different tasks. Obviously, SQL tasks are going to be ones primarily with warehouses that we're going to be concerned with, but they could be anything. They could be Python, DBT, Spark tasks, your machine learning workflows. This is how you orchestrate the lakehouse. How do we deal with the migration? I've been talking to a lot of partners, solutions integrators, and people out in the field who have been trying to translate these systems from language A to language B, and they've all been struggling. Why? Well, anyone who speaks multiple languages will tell you things get lost in translation, right? I think there's a word for everything in German, but we don't have a word for everything in every language, right? So all of these systems, they have different services, capabilities, controls. They don't map. There is a tried and true way to migrate from system to system that we've been doing over the past 20 years, metadata-driven frameworks. Although it was really expensive because you had to pay an army of consultants to extract the metadata out of those systems. And then usually every SI, once you have the metadata, built a tool that will put that data into your target architecture, right? Here's where we use AI to drop the costs down and be a lot more efficient about it. AI is great, especially our model, DBRX, at understanding code from all these systems, right? We use AI to extract the metadata out of these systems. We put it in a metadata-driven framework. And then we use automation or AI to put the data into workflows. I've been working with a couple of systems integrators on this, and we basically started off doing SSIS and store procedures, and we're seeing great results. This makes a whole lot of sense when I talk to practitioners. It's like, yes, you need to have like a Rosetta Stone between all these systems, and that's kind of what that is. That's what a metadata-driven framework does. It extracts the source to target, the transformation of business logic, the data quality rules, so that you can put it into another system. And to boot, we can actually use LLMs as judges to audit this. Did we account for everything? We have lakehouse monitoring and federation. Is all the data tying out at every phase? And we don't have to have consultants do this. We'll have AI do it. Maybe we'll have our partners develop tools that have AI do it and offer assurance capabilities. There's a whole lot of benefits we have here to modernize these old systems, and we should definitely be leveraging AI to do that. Because what do you get at the other side of the rainbow? It's amazing. Actually, you get simple, real-time monitoring and recovery. When bad things happen to your pipelines, you don't have to go struggling between all these different systems to see how you're gonna recover from failure. When data's not coming in the way you expect, you can build bots to Slack or Teams message people, hey, something's wrong, you need to go look at this. Automatically, proactively. And when things fail, because problems happen, things will fail. There's a magical button inside workflows called repair run or repair task. You fix whatever, in this example, someone put inserts instead of insert. I go and I fix that. I click that repair run button. It knows exactly where it failed. It picks up where it failed, and it starts continuously processing that data. So super simple monitoring and real-time recovery is waiting for you after the migration. But it doesn't stop there. A lot of times the business says, I need real-time data. Now, We can't be waiting overnight. Overnight batch processing was so 20 years ago. We need real-time data today. Finally, with our friends at Delta Live Tables, we've brought streaming to the SQL API in Databricks SQL. You can build streaming tables that read off message queues or off of storage locations on ADLS or S3 or GCS. And you can get real time, and it's simple enough for your SQL people to do. But then you could also get simple and fast materialized views so that your reports and dashboards, people don't have to wait for compute time. There's also benefits by doing this for how large you have to have compute on your consumption side, not just like how the speed, but it could actually also reduce costs because you don't need as big of a warehouse to serve that data. So there's many benefits with materialized views. And this stacks with our caching technologies. So materialization basically makes sure the real-time data is being pushed so that the users are seeing real-time and they get really fast performance. The next thing we normally talk about is, okay, how do I use all these tools together? I have a couple different dimensions that we're gonna slice and dice this down by, but typically I always get asked, does DLT and DBT compete? No, they absolutely do not. DBT is a great transformation framework. DBT does not connect to source systems. It's a transformation framework. DLT connects to source systems. It's actually gonna have that Archeon incremental CDC built right into it. So DLT will connect all those systems and it'll do what I call bronze to silver. And this is generally where I see central IT teams operating. You have your central IT team doing all your core ingestion, bronze to silver, and then you wanna do self-service. People call this data mesh. And this is where now we're fusing and meshing together all the different frameworks, right? Now you can give the analytics engineers their ability to deliver all those last mile solutions. But everything is governed under Unity. We'll track end-to-end lineage. Doesn't matter what tool they use. It's all on Databricks, right? We'll track the lineage. We'll make it discoverable in Unity Catalog. We have federated governance, right? Now you can enable that self-service. Your core IT team is happy. They have the tools that they want. And then your analytics engineers, your consumers, your users who need to use that data, they're happy because they have the tools they want to use. And you're happy because it's all governed, monitored, and lineage with Unity Catalog. So thinking about the data mesh, how does that fit in with this? Here we see a data domain. Inside a data domain, you'll be using DLT to do that core ingestion, that bronze to silver, and then DBT on the SQL warehouse to do that silver to gold. And then your data scientists, who are using it's Databricks serverless or serverless generic compute, they're using Python or Scala or R on all their MLAI tools. And this is how everybody kind of interacts with this slice of the data, slice inside the data domain. And generally, when I'm talking to customers about modernizing, they always ask, what's the data modeling tool du jour nowadays? Is it still dimensional modeling? Is it Inman or Kimball? Data mesh kind of looks like Kimball because it's data mart based. Although if you really want to do data integration, you have to do Inman based. But then what if I have high complexity? I got these guys called Vault Speed who say that data vault is all the rage. Like, what should I choose? And then what about my machine learning people and my data scientists? Do they need a data model? Has anyone ever heard of denormalization? It's the worst thing in the world. You should never denormalize data. Data that was in the warehouse should not be denormalized to give to the data scientists. They should be using the same source data, and then it should be servicing all of these things. One big table is generally all the rage in machine learning because feature tables can be very long, right? But then in BI, you should use dimensional modeling or data vault. How I advise the difference, if you have simple data, if you don't have a lot of source systems, if you're a small company, dimensional modeling is great, right? Whether you do Inman, Kimball, either way, if you want to do true data mesh, it's more Kimball because you build the data marts and then you bring them together. But still, I think however you want to architect it, what you're doing is you're kind of making sure you give the right data for the right tools at the end of the day. It should not be one modeling choice to rule them all. Some people need one big table. Some people need dimensional modeling. If you're a large global conglomerate who's spent the last 20 years acquiring and merging with other companies, you're gonna need something that can handle high complexity. That's Data Vault, right? All of this works on Databricks. It's all about choosing the right tool sets for the job. It's not about fitting everything into a square peg, into a square hole, right? You gotta use the right tool for the job. Great. So now we have our modeling figured out. We generally have the how we're going to approach this, the user experiences. I know I'm not going to be price gouged after I scale this thing up to 1,000 users. Okay. But how am I going to unify all these users for all these use cases? What if I already have investments in other data clouds? One thing I get asked by a lot of customers is, I use Snowflake. How do you play nice with them? And I'll tell you, I've been talking to a lot of customers about their architecture, and if you really want to use the right tool for the job, this is my perspective. And even Fabric. Power BI is great. All the other stuff that they took off the shelf, shuffled in a deck, and tossed in the Fabric, I'm not so sure about. But Fabric Power BI is great. And it connects directly to our SQL warehouse or Snowflake. But with Databricks, you should definitely process your data in an open data lake, your data lake. It's your data. We'll help you manage it with Delta. And with Uniform, Snowflake or any other Iceberg reader, whether it's Dremio or any of the other partners that they have, they can read that gold layer as Iceberg. We do not copy data. In order to maintain one version of the truth, copies of data have to go away. Those copies of data in Excel eventually have to go away, but we're going to burn that one down another day. But essentially, if you want to know how to use all these tools the best, most optimal way, use Snowflake for what they're good at. They say they're a good warehouse. I disagree. I've written blogs about it. But hey, if you have teams internally I love Snowflake's UI, it's great. I'm not moving away. Great. Most customers I talk to, they say the ETL is really expensive. We offload that to Databricks. And then we expose that Uniform as Iceberg to Snowflake. They just read it. We ran the benchmarks. The performance is the same as their internal tables, so that's absolutely the way to go. Then if there's data in Snowflake you don't want to copy out, like their marketplace data, or let's just say that you want to use their internal tables for some reason, we use Lakehouse Federation. We'll federate to the data. Again, don't copy data. Copying data is very, very expensive in the cloud. Does everybody know what Warren Buffett says about compound interest? It's the most powerful force in the world, in the universe. Imagine compound data. Statistica states that we are growing data volumes 20% year over year. Jensen said 5x, I think 20x in 5 years. Ridiculous numbers, right? Data volumes are compounding. Worse than interest. Do not copy your data. That's the big thing I want to make sure everybody hears here. You should definitely leverage these open tools and open tool sets to process the data once, and then everybody hooks into it. Because when you do it this way, Unity Catalog has all your metadata, and your users have simple data understanding. They can understand how my data is related. Remember, we already have lineage as well, so now they understand how my data got here. They understand how they can find it, because we have all that rich metadata now with AI-generated documentation. So finding what they're looking for, understanding how to use it, where did it come from, these are all super clear, right? Once we bring that transparency, that's how when we could really start moving forward on the single version of the truth, because now it's super transparent. And the users can get great help from AI right inside your SQL. You know, has anyone had to write really complex regex to extract stuff out of strings? Yeah? AI extract is amazing. You just tell it what you want to extract and it does it. You got to turn the temperature down like Casey was doing this morning, because you don't want non-deterministic results. Usually if you do something like that, you want deterministic results, so you have to turn down the temperature. But that's another class for another day. And then also analyze sentiment. You don't have to build a model for this, it just does it. And if you're in regulated industries, like the customers that I help, AI mask is amazing, because it just figures out what's PII and PHI on the fly, and it'll mask it. I think you can severely simplify your SQL so that you can get effortless 10x productivity to all of your data workers. And here are 3 of my most favorite things that the product team has delivered to us. First off, it's focus mode. You know, one of our engineers said, because we have 2 different stacks, in our SQL query editor, we have a query like typical tool, and then we have notebooks. And they were like, hey, isn't a SQL editor like a 1-celled notebook? And it was like, this guy, it was brilliant. It was like, yeah, it is. So now we're unifying our stacks, actually. So behind the scenes, we're making it happen. But focus mode is amazing. I could take a cell, I expand it to my whole screen. I want to focus on this. But one cell is not at all. When I'm developing code or a script or something, I have multiple things I'm working with. Then you unfocus, go to the next, and focus on it. Focus on one problem at a time until completion is what I like to say. AI lets you iterate super fast. Here, I had a query. I needed to add a column because my user wanted it. And I'm not doing super strict data warehousing, so my user needs a column. I just give it to them. But then my code was never documented. Oh, man, who likes documenting code? Not me. We'll have the AI do it. So I asked it, add credit rating from customer, and hey, document my code while you're at it, and it did it. It's super amazing. And finally, run cells in parallel. In the notebook, you can run many, many SQL cells in parallel. So when you're trying to do root cause analysis, you don't have to wait for one query to finish before you fire the next one. You can run them all in parallel. Really help you get your job done super duper fast. I'm the data warehousing BI guy. I don't necessarily have to sell our data science features, but they're amazing. You should definitely check out the other talks where they talk wax long about all of these things. But I hear from our data scientists that this part of the platform is amazing. But I usually don't have to sell that. This is kind of what Databricks is known for. But what about DevOps? How do I do CI/CD? Repos is amazing. Repos integrates right into Databricks, and you can take all that awesome stuff that you're building and you can implement it super fast with our repos service. You can automate all your CI/CD with the repos API. Amazing features. But it doesn't stop there. What about my ML ops? I have to manage all these models to production, how they're working, evaluate them, and promote them along the chain. How do I manage all that? ML Flow is great. You all heard this morning about how all the features are going to ML Flow for Gen AI, but we still have to manage regular old-fashioned machine learning too, right? And all those ML AI models. ML Flow helps you simplify the ML ops process. And then when you need to do prompt engineering, because that's usually a lot of the folks that I talk to don't really focus on like the pre-training and the hard stuff of AI. It's like, I want to customize my prompts for these specific use cases. We've got this great UI where they can do prompt engineering super duper fast. I use this all the time. The playground and this, it helps me tune in my prompts so I get exactly what I need out of the AI. So that's what I think the Medallion Mesh is. I think it's open. It's collaborative, it's transparent, it's clear that we are going to take the best parts of the Medallion architecture, of data mesh, and FinOps, and MLOps, and DevOps, all the ops, bring them together, mesh them all together into what makes sense for your business to operate on. And remember, we're going to do this with priority, because once we bag and tag all our assets, now we can have a data-driven approach to prioritize how we're going to be modernizing all our systems. Because remember, one thing I like to remind people, does anybody know how much money Meta makes, Facebook, in a year? It's like hundreds of billions of dollars. How much does Facebook cost users? Anybody? 0, right? Users don't pay anything. How do they make their money? Ads. Well, why do they make more money than probably Google and them probably make a lot of money off ads? But why do they make the most money off ads? Is Facebook awesome? Like, what do advertisers care? No, it's the data pipeline. The data pipeline is the most valuable part of Facebook. They take the data of all that user transactions and they serve it up to their advertisers and they give them a nice little menu that says, here's how you can target who you're looking for. And you're gonna pay us a lot of money to do that. It's the data pipeline plus the AI together that makes Meta hundreds of billions of dollars of a company, right? What could your company do if you actually had a great pipeline and had some good AI on top of that? I think that's something to think about. That's what I think the Medallion Mesh is. So I think we should rise up and unify with the Medallion Mesh. Thank you.